Hey guys, Snake Eater here. First off, let me say sorry if I look tired. I didn't get very much sleep last night. What we're gonna be talking about today is the changes that I would make to Nova. And these changes are I'm reaching a little bit here because they're pretty crazy changes. Like, Nova's gonna be pretty OP with these changes. But with the buff that they announced with Nova, I wasn't very satisfied with it. It's just 3 little changes to his damage. I was really hoping for a new utility kit or a utility upgrade in general, but unfortunately not. So I got to thinking, what would I do if I was in charge of the Nova buff? My phone won't stay still. There. And I've got some ideas. Changes I would make to Nova. I've had a 5-star rank 5 Nova for about a year now. I've never found a use for him in endgame content, except Alliance War defense. He really seems to be made and targeted as an annoying defender. His utility is not up to par when it's compared to other god tier cosmic champs. He's not a bad champ. I want to make that clear. I don't think he's a bad champ. He's like an above average champ, I think. I think he's a good champ, but he's lacking compared to Hyperion, Captain Marvel, Corvus, Venom, Terrax, Vision Arcus, Silver Surfer, Cold Obsidian, etc. What utility does Nova have? Well, not a lot. I'm gonna just go off a couple that I know. He has auto block, and if he's awakened, he can activate parry with that auto block. It's mostly defense, but if you get intercepted, then that can help you out if you're a scrub like me. Medium attacks don't do contact. They don't make contact, and they deal energy damage. With True Strike, guaranteed critical hits or unblockable hits, opponents suffer negative 70 attack rating. So that helps a bit with Ghost or Corvus Glaive and other champions. And he can armor break tech champions. Special 1 gives True Strike. And I might be missing a couple other things, but those are like just basically the most of his utility right there. Overall, nothing is consistent. Nothing is consistently useful in endgame content. The new buff that's coming in a few days, or a couple days, whatever, it's just a little boost to his damage, that's all. Now, when I was thinking about what changes I would make to not Captain Marvel, Nova, I took inspiration from other cosmic champions, like Venom the Duck, Carnage, Venom, Captain Marvel, Hyperion, Cosmic Ghost Rider, and Medusa. Like I said earlier, I might have made Nova a bit too OP, but it's Nova. He deserves it. I may have added a bit too much to his kit, but I may have overdone it, but it's Nova. He deserves it. Point I tried to get across with these abilities: more endgame content utility, especially against annoying tech champions. A lot of energy damage, crazy amount of buffs. Managing his Nova chargers has a higher payoff, and it's a lot more satisfying once you get the rotation down. He's a ramp up champion, but doesn't take too long to get going. Alright, Nova, Cosmic, abilities. The following stats and abilities are based off a 5-star rank 5, level 65. Pre-fight ability. Yes, I added a pre-fight ability. You can swap between 2 different stances. I couldn't think of a great name for the stances. He seems to be going between the 2 worlds, Xandar and Earth, mostly, when I was looking up his history, so I just chose those as his stances. Choose at the beginning of the fight which stance you want to start in. It's an attack stance or a defend stance. If you don't choose, automatically chooses defense. Attack is called Earth stance. It grants precision buffs, cruelty, and power gain buffs. They activate in a random order. And his defense stance is called the Xandar stance. It grants armor, block proficiency, and regeneration. They also activate in a random order. All buffs last for 10 seconds. Anytime energy damage is dealt, these buffs are paused for 3 seconds. Energy damage comes from heavy, mediums, special 1, special 2, special 3. Earth and Xandar buffs don't stack. Example, in Xandar stance, only 1 regeneration buff at a time. If regen is active, then the next buff to activate is either going to be block proficiency or armor. If regen and armor are active, then the next Xandar stance is guaranteed to be block proficiency. So you can't get 2 regens, you can't get 2 armors, you can't get 2, it's just 1 of each. Once all 3 buffs are active from the same stance, they can be refreshed converted, and become permanent buffs after reaching 100 Nova charges. Once refreshed as permanent buffs, they gain plus 50% potency. Any other active buffs that are also active while you're converting these into permanent buffs, they get converted into permanent buffs too, such as True Strike or Fury buffs. Use heavy attacks to switch between the two stances, because his heavy attack looks really cool. It's badass, it looks amazing, but there's no core utility with it right now. I think he has a synergy that makes his like heavy attack do something, refresh the Fury buffs or something. I don't know, but there's nothing important right now, but I think his heavy attack should be important when it comes to his abilities. So use a heavy attack to switch between Xandar stance and Earth stance. Dashing forward. Now, I didn't want to change the core mechanic of Nova, which is his dashing forward mechanic. I hated when they changed the core mechanic of the hood, so I shouldn't change the core mechanic of Nova. So I tried to keep it the same with this, but I just added a few things. When successfully striking opponents, Nova has minus 30% offensive power rate. I believe that's the same as his abilities right now. Brought to you by Vitamin Water. Just kidding, not sponsored. I wish. Okay, while dashing forward, Nova passively gains up to 20% of a bar of power based on the distance traveled. That's the same as it is now, I think. I don't think I changed anything with those. While he's in Earth form, each Earth buff that he has active gives 7.5% of bar of power while dashing. So he gains that up to 20% of bar of power on top of each buff that's active that's in Earth stance, plus 7.5%. While dashing forward, gain a burst of Nova charges based on the distance traveled. That's still in his core abilities. But while you're in Xandar form, each Xandar buff gives plus 5 Nova charges. So if you only have one Xandar buff, you just get 5 extra 5 Nova charges when you're dashing. If you have 2, you get 10. If you have 3, you get 15. Earth buffs give extra power while dashing. Xandar buffs give extra Nova charges while dashing. So you have to have those buffs active, and you gotta switch between those two to which one do you want. If Nova has 3 active buffs from each stance, all permanent at the same time, gain extra Nova charges and power while dashing regardless of what form Nova's in. You gain the extra power and you gain the extra Nova charges from your buffs at the same time. Dashing forward and being intercepted by the opponent activates one or the other ability. In Xandar form, you gain auto block and you inflict the opponent with a weakness debuff at the cost of 1 Fury buff and 15 Nova charges. In Earth form, activate Unstoppable and inflict opponent with a weakness debuff with the cost of 1 Fury and 15 Nova charges. This ability goes on cooldown for 20 seconds, so basically don't get intercepted a lot. Only get intercepted once every 20 seconds. Nova's medium attacks do not make contact and they deal energy damage. That's still the same. When Nova is struck with a True Strike, unblockable, or guaranteed critical hit, each Xandar or Earth buff that's active makes the opponent suffer negative 15% attack rating. Nova charges, a max of 100. Nova enters the fight at 0 Nova charges and passively generates them over time. Nova charges passively generate slower the more charges he has. I believe that's still the same in the abilities. I didn't change that part. While dashing forward, Nova generates additional Nova charges. More Nova charges are generated the farther he travels. I didn't change that. It's still the same. If struck with a True Strike, unblockable attack, or guaranteed critical hit, he generates 25 Nova charges. I believe in his abilities right now it's 50, but I nerfed that to 25 because he has a lot of other ways to gain Nova charges. So I think keeping that at 50 would just be a little bit overkill. When one of Nova's buffs is nullified, remove 25 charges and prevent Nova charges from being generated for 6 seconds. I think that was 12 seconds, but I think I brought it down to 6 seconds. The developer's note, I kept it in there from the forum post. The main resource that powers Nova's abilities is generated by dashing. A full screen medium dash attack will roughly grant 10 Nova charges, while half a screen only does 5. So that changes with how many buffs you have active if you're in the correct stance. So that's 10 Nova charges. You get 5 more for every buff you have if you're in the correct stance, if that makes sense. Nova Force. Nova's medium attacks deal 50% of damage done as a burst of energy damage. So whatever your mediums do, 50% of that damage is added on top of that as energy damage. At 25 Nova charges, Nova's second medium attack deals an additional 35% of damage done as burst energy damage. So overall total, it should be 85% energy damage on your second medium. Activating this ability consumes 25 Nova charges. Activate second random Xandar or Earth buff, depending on current stance. So once you get up to 25 Nova charges, that's how you get your second buff. At 50 Nova charges, auto blocks can be triggered while stunned. Activating this ability purifies stun debuffs. That's mostly for Alliance War defense, and that's in his core abilities. I left that alone. But I added activate third random Xandar or Earth buff, depending on current stance. So you gain your first buff at the start of the fight. When you gain your Fury buff, you also gain your first random buff on top of that. You gain your second buff by getting 25 Nova charges. You gain your third buff by gaining 50 Nova charges, but they aren't permanent and they're slowly ticking away. So you can refresh them by doing energy damage. At 75 Nova charges, gain a Fury buff, increasing attack rating by 20% for 15 seconds, and refresh all active Fury buffs on Nova. Max is 3 stacks of these Furies. So you have your first Fury, that's permanent, and you have these 3. So you should have 4 Furies total. At 100 Nova charges, gain an unblockable buff for 5 seconds and purify 1 damaging or non-damaging debuff on Nova. Using a special attack before the unblockable buff expires, inflicts the opponent with that purified debuff. So if you have a bleed on you, gain those 100 Nova charges, and you're unblockable, you use a special attack, you purify that first of all, but if you use a special attack before the unblockable expires, you throw that bleed at the opponent. Affects the opponent with a purified debuff. If 3 buffs are active from the same stance, which it should be, from the 25 to 50 and your first buff, unless they expire, so you gotta start over if they expire. If 3 buffs are active from the same stance, convert into a permanent buff, along with any other active buffs. Convert those into permanent buffs along with any other active buffs, and they all gain plus 50% potency. This ability consumes 100 Nova charges when the unblockable buff expires, having Nova charges start over at 0. The unblockable buff cannot be converted into permanent. Whatever stance you are currently in, each corresponding buff lets the Nova start his charges out at plus 5 per buff. So if you're in Xandar form, and you have to start over at 0. If you have 3 Xandar buffs, then you start out at 15, if that makes sense, instead of 0. But if you have 3 permanent buffs from each stance, and you go from 100 to 0, instead of 0, you start at 25. If both stances have all 3 buffs permanent, regardless of what stance you're in, start out at plus 25 charges. Fury buff. Nova starts the fight with a permanent Fury buff, increasing attack rating by 20%. Starting the fight with Xandar stance will make a random Xandar buff activate at the start of the fight. Using heavy attack to change stances will activate the other stance's first buff. Example, start fight with Xandar. Fight starts with the permanent Fury and regeneration. Use a heavy attack, and then you activate Earth stance, and then you will get a cruelty buff. So basically, that permanent Fury buff activates your first random buff from your stances. If nullified, removed, or prevented in any way, Fury buff goes on cooldown for 6 seconds. I believe this was 12 seconds, but I changed it to 6. 12 seconds is way too long. If Fury is removed in any way, the first buff that activated with the stance is also removed. Example, you started the fight in Earth form, and you got a power game buff. Fury buff is removed, then the power game buff is also removed. To reactivate the power buff, you have to gain those. You have to go up to the 50 charges ability with your Nova charges. If you had 3 permanent buffs in Earth form, the first buff can still be removed, and you have to restart the rotation of making all 3 buffs permanent again. That makes sense. I'm pretty sure it does. Energy damage and armor breaks. Whenever energy damage is dealt, the opponent suffers armor breaks for each successful energy hit. So if they block an energy hit, you don't get an armor break on the opponent. Energy damage comes from heavy attacks, 2 armor breaks. First medium does not inflict an armor break, but still does energy damage, if that makes sense. Your second medium inflicts 1 armor break with the energy damage. Special 1 gives 2 armor breaks. Special 2 gives 3 armor breaks. And Special 3 gives 4 armor breaks. Follow me? Against any champ, these energy attacks inflict an armor break debuff, reducing armor for 525 for 25 seconds. Now his current, the way he is now, you can only armor break tech champions, and I think that's stupid. So with this, you can armor break any champion, but only against tech champions. At 4 armor breaks, convert into an armor shatter for 30 seconds. So you can't armor shatter any opponent, only tech champions. Armor shatter does not stack. Armor shatter makes robots suffer 100% ability accuracy reduction. Special attacks. Special 1, energy beam attack, then headbutt. This attack pauses all fury buffs for 5 seconds. Consume 25 Nova charges and gain an energized buff, increasing power weight by 30% for 10 seconds. And you also activate a true strike buff for 10 seconds. Both buffs gain +1 second duration for each Earth or Xandar buff that's active when you use that special 1. Like I said earlier, special 1 inflicts 2 armor breaks. Special 2. How about 3 energy beams? Attack consumes 50 charges total to gain a Nova Surge buff, granting 100% additional Nova charge generation for 10 seconds. Each hit deals armor break 3 in total. Deal up to 110% of damage done as burst energy damage with each hit. Potency of energy damage is +10% for every Xandar Earth buff active. So this special 2 is going to hit like a freaking truck with the energy damage if you have enough buffs active. Special 3, sit, stay, good. Now watch me fly around in a pretty circle and then BAM! Consumes all Nova charges and deals 1.5% of damage done as an additional burst of energy for every Nova charge consumed. So if you're at 100 Nova charges, use a special 3, that's plus 150% energy damage of what your original special 3 damage does, if that makes sense. Also, special 3, added a lot of stuff with the special 3. Reactivate Nova's permanent fury buff if it's on cooldown. If in Xandar form, activate protection buffs total to the number of active Xandar buffs. These protect against any attempt the opponent tries to change Nova's healing abilities. Heal block, heal reversal. Each protect buff potency is 50% for non-tech opponents, 100% potency if tech opponent. Now, if there's a non-tech opponent that tries to heal block you, it only heal blocks 50% of your regeneration. But if it's a tech champion trying to heal block you, the buff totally cancels that out. So it's not 3 stacking buffs of 100 or 300% potency. It's 1 buff blocks that 1 heal block, 100% of it if it's a tech champion. Does that make sense? Like if you're going up against Warlock and he tries to heal block you with his viruses, or Guillotine 2099 tries to heal reverse you with her special 2, it blocks that out with the protection buffs. If you're in Earth form, activate protection buffs total to the number of active Earth buffs. These protection buffs protect against any instance the opponent tries to change Nova's power. Power steal, power lock, power drain. Each protect buff potency is 50% for non-tech champions, 100% potency if it's a tech champion. So with Guillotine 2099, her special 1 has like a power drain. This buff will counter that, so it doesn't power drain a Nova. But if it's a I don't know, magic, then she only takes 50% of the power that she was originally gonna take. So how these buffs work is, if the opponent tries to power lock you 3 times in a row, those 3 buffs will block all those 3 times. You get what I'm saying? Activating a special 3, if both forms all have 3 buffs permanent, you gain all heal and all power protection buffs at the same time. So you'll get 6 protection buffs, 3 protecting your healing, and 3 protecting your power instead of only having one or the other. And this attack deals 4 armor break debuffs. If the opponent is tech, then convert these 4 armor breaks into armor shatter for 30 seconds. If armor shatter is already active on the opponent, just refresh it and it goes back to 30 seconds. Signature ability, Buckethead. That's one of his nicknames I saw on the internet. I was doing some research. Nova's medium attacks gain up to 50% bonus attack rating based on the distance traveled in the last executed dash. Each buff active adds on to that for plus 2.5% attack. If the buffs are permanent, then it increases to 5% per buff. I think this may be a little overpowered. That might have to be nerfed. Not too sure, but that might be crazy attack-wise. At 75 plus Nova charges, Nova's auto block triggers to parry mastery this, blah blah blah. That's the same, I didn't change that. That's mostly for Alliance War defense. The duration of buffs is increased by 80%, Sig 200, 50%, Sig 20. I did this so the gap between Sig 20 and Sig 200 isn't too drastic. Right now, my 5-star rank 5 Sig 200 Nova, he has that 80% buff increase at Sig 200. I'm not sure what Sig 20 is, but my Nova. So, what do you guys think? I think I made Nova a bit too OP. I think I tried to balance out his Nova charges with his buffs, and then with the special attacks, I tried to make them all fit and make them all make sense and make them all work together. So, I guess the rotation you'd want to do is obviously try to get those 3 buffs and turn them permanently ASAP. And then also you can, when you're turning those 3 Earth or Xandar buffs permanent, you can also turn True Strike buff permanently if it's active from the special one. You can turn all Fury buffs permanently. You can turn his Power Surge from the special, what is this, special 1? Nova Power Surge buff from a special 2, you can turn that permanently. And then his Energized buff from a special 1, you can turn that permanent too. So, I don't know. This is just something I thought would be fun and cool. This is just my idea of buffing Nova. It changes a lot, but it doesn't change anything of his core abilities, I don't think. I don't think I took anything out. I just added on top of what he already had, I'm pretty sure. I think this would be a badass Nova. He would like totally change the game. I think he'd work well with Suicide Masteries. If he has his armor up, his regeneration and block proficiency all permanent, in my my version of Nova, he's one of the best block proficiency champs in the game. His block proficiency is like top 5 if he has those 3 permanent with the 50% additional potency. And then his regeneration should counter Suicide Mastery recoil and the poison bleed damage too. So I'm thinking his regeneration is pretty damn good. And then with the precision, cruelty, and power gain, his power gains are gonna be nice because you already gain power from dashing forward, but on top of that, you like slowly gain power in the background too with that power gain buff. It's not gonna be a lot, just gonna be a tiny bit, I think. I don't have exact numbers, I'm not good with exact numbers. Precision and the cruelty buff, I think with those, on average, a 5-hit combo, 3 or 4 hits should be critical, and his medium hits should be ranging from like, with energy damage included, from like 5,000 to like 20,000. Because right now my Nova in real life can do like 13,000 damage with the energy, with his mediums. So I think with the buff increase, with the damage, you can easily get up to 20,000 mediums. And I think it's going to be easy to keep the buffs because they're at like 10 seconds, and then they pause every time you do energy damage. I think it's going to be easy to keep them, but like not too easy. I don't want this to be the easiest champ in the game. You still have to think a little bit about how you're going to keep those buffs and make them permanent. I think a special 2 should do a lot of damage too. A special 3 is more for utility wise, and I think a special 2 is definitely where most of his damage is going to come from. A special 2 and then his medium attacks. So what do you think? That's my version of Nova. That's what I would do if I was buffing Nova. Kabam. If there's anyone out there, if this gets to you somehow, hear me out with a few of these abilities, alright? Think about it. Please. I know this might make Nova OP, and I think this would probably put him on the same level as Cosmic Ghost Rider, but that's okay.